guys a few days ago.
In Levitt is on board, and it's unclear if he's going to coach or not. If he's not there, what kind of difference does that make?
Not a lot. I would guess they're so far into it that somebody else could take over with their calls. That's what's happened to us when we've lost coordinators prior to bowl games.
Just while we're on it, because you know how distractions can come up this time of year. I guess McIntyre hung up on a national radio interview this morning because they linked into the LA Rams. He and two other college coaches. Does that, when that kind of stuff filters in your team because now they're not in school, they're around each other, does it matter, do you think?
I don't think so. I think that, I know Coach McIntyre a little bit. I've kind of followed him from afar. I have a lot of respect for the way he runs his organization. I think there's a lot of similarities to what he does and what we do. And so if that were true, I would say that his players should probably care less.
Is there a turning point in the program where that area became more of the focus? Seems like maybe in the last 10 years it's been done enough to
really like the last 6 or 7. We were able to identify quite a few players in our travel camps that had good numbers, and then when we did research on the number of schools that were spending quality time in that area, it was somewhat minimal compared to the major metropolitan areas in Texas. So we started to jump in there and had some success. Ryan Simmons, those guys, and then word got around, and then we've just kind of followed up, and we've been very fortunate to get good players who have been quality people here. It's been a really productive area for our program. Mm-hmm. Oh, I think his demeanor is he's somewhat old school in his willingness to strike the other team. It goes against human nature to want to collide with another human body, and I don't really think he gives a second thought about it. And he brings a little bit of toughness to our program, and especially our defense. Yes, 2 in Houston, 2 in Dallas, 1 in Central Texas, and 1 in East Texas years ago, 12 years ago. I think that's how it started. That area, the San Antonio area was originally one of the spots. I believe that's correct.
How much more competitive is recruiting in San Antonio now than it was 6 or 7 years ago when you started focusing on it more?
It's picked up considerably in the last 2 years.
Why do you think that area went untapped?
It's easy to fly into Dallas and Houston and drive around. Once you get out west, there's some decent players there, but a little bit more off the beaten path, and not as much of an opportunity to make as many sales because they're far and few compared to the number of around Dallas, Fort Worth, Houston area. So many schools just at every 5-minute drive. Compared to that area, it's a little more spread out.
Why has San Antonio picked up just the last couple of years?
I guess more players have been coming out of there, and so more schools have been going in, predominantly the SEC.
Now that you've had a chance to look at tape, what are some of the things you kind of noticed that impressed you more and more about, let's just take Colorado on defense first?
What are you doing here? Huh? You just all of a sudden show up again? No, I wouldn't say that. I was glad to see you. Colorado's defense, is that what you asked me about?
Yeah.
I'd mentioned this a week ago. They're very good. Old school quarters, zero coverage, pressure, adjusted a little bit to a 3 down here recently, and have tied that into what would have been that system that was around for a long time before. Very stingy. I think 20.8 points a game. The nose guard's a 340 pounder, is hard to move. 98's has been a terrific pass rusher for him. 4 and 23 are covering really well, and their safeties tackle. And they're going to force you in my opinion, they're going to force you to try to throw passes and try to squeeze the run and make it extremely difficult to get yards on the ground.
Now you kind of talked about this somewhat, but Mason's a guy that's popping up in a lot of NFL draft kind of things. What is that like to have a player go through that? What do you see from him at the next level, or do you look into that?
I don't really look into it much. I would guess that most of those mock drafts are fabricated. There's probably only one or two of them that really have a clue of what they're talking about. Most of it's good for talk radio, which is about as accurate as a North Korean test missile. But for the most part, Mason will have to make a decision at some point of what he wants to do next season. I said this earlier. I've only had one player that I felt like was ready for the NFL to go early, and that was Brandon Pettigrew. He stayed. Now, Blackman was a redshirt guy. Whedon was 30 years old. They were in a different category. They both came back also. So I think he could really improve his overall long-term by spending another year here. But that's a decision that he'll have to make with his family within the next 3 weeks.
Talking about recruiting a minute ago, how big are your in-state guys? Because I know you've had quite a bit of successful guys. I know it's picking up, through February.
Are you talking about in-state recruiting? Yeah. Well, the Oklahoma is getting better and better each year, and which is really good for us. The number of players that are being evaluated by us, and the ones that, in our opinion, which is never perfect, that we think are good enough to play in this conference has gone up considerably in the last few years, and in particular even more this year, and then I foresee next year as even being a better year.
I was thinking of holding this, but I was talking to another coach in a different college last night, and he brought up your haircut.
Is y'all's nose cold? My nose is cold.
Yeah, a little bit. And he brought up your haircut. He said, that's ingenious, because Mike Gundy knows people are talking about the mullet. They see him with it, and he goes, it's identifiable for recruits. So he credited the mullet as a great recruiting concept.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I could take credit for that much of it. The old rule in marketing is anything where your name's out there, good or bad, is good. But it's interesting with the recruits. When I go in the homes or I visit with them in my office with the parents, they don't really care, but their parents stare at your hair, and I'm not sure whether they like it or not. But up to this point, we've done pretty good recruiting. So.
Could you talk about Colorado on offense?
The quarterback is a big guy. They list him at 6'4", 238. I think he's a little bigger than that. Smart, likes to play the game, willing to run, willing to take hits, rushing for 230 a game or so. They want to use him in their running game. These guys are very well coached, not only on offense but defense. Their schemes are sound, in my opinion, and their running back is he's a 180 pounder, and he's a somewhat elusive and can jump around and make you miss. But they have the 4 wideouts that all make plays. They're quick guys that they use to their advantage, in my opinion, in play action passing, which helps build off their running game. Coach Mack's son is, he's one of those 4 that they use in the slot, and is a lot like what Josh Stewart or Glidden or Cooper, those guys were. He makes a lot of plays for him, real savvy player. So in general with Colorado, they really maximize who they are and the potential they have as a team. Sometimes we play teams that are really talented that don't get a lot out of their team. And then we play guys that certainly maximize who they are and get a lot out of their personnel, and they fall in that category.
Vincent Taylor's another San Antonio guy for you, Coach. Can you talk about his journey here and how this year he's just consistently had a nose for the big play for you guys?
He's stepped up. I think he was somewhat overlooked last year because of Bean and Ogbah, and made a few more plays that people didn't notice. But he's been very important to our success at times this season in close games where he made big plays, like the fumble in the West Virginia game, where we were able to get the ball and score. And he's made some key plays on third downs for us, and he's evolved, and he's developing into a good player. He's got a great future. Certainly glad that we have him.
What's it about a guy like him, though, that allows him to just always be in the right place, it seems?
I mean, luck, I guess. I don't know. He's good players, guys that have a very or very cerebral football players and have savvy generally end up in the right place at the right time. And for the world he lives in, he's fairly intelligent, and he gets it. He sees blocking schemes. He sees light hand, heavy hand with offensive linemen. He sees backfield sets. He sees the depth of the quarterback pre-snap, and he can think things through. And the game that we play in today is more about guys that can think fast and maybe run fast. And he falls into that category. He has skill, but he can think really fast.
Mike, it sounded like what you said earlier. Mason hasn't made a decision about his future, but guys like James and Vince are probably going to have to if they made any progress on those fronts.
We sent all that in. I mentioned that to you guys about, I don't know, maybe almost 2 weeks ago. Well, no, it wouldn't be that far because it was after the OU game. So a couple days after that game, we brought them in, and they do all the online and send it into the NFL. And then we wait for them to send back the response of what the cumulative group of people think about their future in the NFL this year.
You haven't got those reports back yet.
Just those three guys? Is that?
No. Chad Whitener sent one in. Anybody can send one in. You can send one in. The response won't be great, but you can do it. And I really like you a lot, but you're like me. They just discard us. But Chad is a guy that could get in a camp someday, and he sent one in. And sometimes guys send them in, but we haven't got anything back. I would hope that we would get that back within a week. Usually it's like a 12 to 14 day period, but there's no guarantee it's out of our hands.
So you think you'll have it before
been off the radar
Mm-hmm.
to us 7 years since they switched conference. Did you ever stop to think about them at all and think, why have they gotten so low, and the lack of success? And last month or 2 weeks since you've known you're playing them, did you think about how they got back going?
It's interesting. I always watch Colorado, and I always watch Missouri, and I always watch A&M. And Nebraska's kind of been gone for a while, but you still watch them just because we had so many years of they were a part of our conference. Kind of makes me sad at times. But and I go back to what I said earlier about what Coach Mack and them have done. They're not sitting in a location that just gives them availability to jump in a car and go find a lot of guys that are going to compete in a Power 5 conference. And that's not a knock on anybody. I'm saying that as a positive, that you really have to work to get players there to give them an opportunity to compete at a high level would be my guess. I've never coached there, but that's just outside looking in. And so I think that at schools where you don't have the built-in advantages in recruiting, that it just takes a year or two and slip up, and you can fall off the face of the earth real quick. And then you're going to be climbing a ladder for 4 or 5 years to get back, if possible. And that may have been what happened there. Not sure, but just from an outsider looking in.
You face that same kind of challenge here?
Recruiting, we have a better, more fertile recruiting area here, in my opinion. Again, I'm not knocking Colorado. I'm just saying, in just my history of watching. I mean, you can pull it up and look at it. All these guys do, I'm sure, but we're closer to a number of schools that within a 4-hour drive that are going to put out potential Power 5 conference players. A little more remote out there.
Right. What are some of the challenges unique to coaching here, to sustaining long-term success as far as you brought this program in 12 years? You look back on it, what are some of the challenges you faced and have overcome?
Well, I think the biggest challenge was trying to convince people that we could win here without cheating and sustain it for a long period of time. That was first. Then secondly, the challenge is to not try to put ourselves in a position or make us something that we're really not, and stay within our box as a coaching staff. We went through a couple years where we got out of our box a little bit, John, in recruiting, and all of a sudden we thought that we could get the Lawrence Taylors and those guys, and we got left at a point late in January with we had all these good players that were making us feel good, and then when the nightclub closed down, they all left with somebody else, and we were driving home by ourselves. And for that reason, I thought we got out of our box a little bit. Now, not that we don't want to go after everybody, but we now do a better job of making sure that we have a B list that are really good players and that can come in here, and we've proven that we can win BCS bowls with, but we don't want to get left out in the end. And that happened to us a couple years. I think that's really important coaching here, in my opinion. Could be wrong.
You follow this Wake Forest radio deal?
A little bit. I mean, you guys know a lot more about it than I do. Supposedly Dave Hunsacker was a coach there and a radio guy, and he got upset and started telling people what their plays were and stuff.
You launched an investigation into Robert Allen's activities.
Well, Robert has a few issues, but one of them is this: you guys would have to tie him up and knock him out for him to ever say anything that would hurt Oklahoma State. That part I know. So that's one guy we don't worry about now. Hunsacker, I'm not sure. You know, he came from the other side of the country, but no, it's pretty interesting and sad, right? Just for coaches to have, or players or university to have media have access, coaches that visit your practices to have access, NFL scouts to have access, and to think that you would have to protect yourself from somebody doing something like that is really a sad deal, because it's not just one person. It's 130 players on their team that are busting their butt, and all of a sudden it's not as fun because the other team may know your plays. So I just saw it and really didn't want to read about it.
Mike, how hard is it going to be to find someone to do what Jarwin and Beach have done for you?
It's difficult. We're working on it now. It's funny you brought that up, because we had a recruiting meeting this morning, and obviously I can't talk about personnel and recruiting, but we're in the process now of looking for a Zach Veach that played high school ball in Oklahoma, that would play somewhere on the line that's undersized and is not big enough to play at this level. Most of the time you can find a 240, 250 pound guy that's played high school offensive line, that's been a really good player. He loves football and he's tough. He's not big enough to play college. That can jump in and fit in that role for us the next few years. We're looking for that person. So basically I just use that as free advertisement. And you set me up. That's awesome. But what you're saying is correct. Is they're not easy to find, because there's not many of them out there because of the style of play. But there's got to be somebody out there somewhere in Oklahoma that's an undersized lineman, that's got good feet, that can come in and do what he does. But not a lot of players want to do it, because it's a tough man's job. Now, we've glorified it a little bit because they get to catch passes and split out and look good and all that, but it's still a tough man's job.
Have you seen any high schools incorporate that position, whatever they call it?
Not as much. Everybody is they're still hung up in the spread. You see a lot of it. Part of the reason for that is because they take their best athlete in high school and they put him at quarterback and they do all that, and he can run and take off, unless they're fortunate enough to have a guy that can throw passes.
We've had several first-year players this year really have some breakout years. Might there be an opportunity to talk to, say, a Barry Sanders or Justice or Pipkins or something in the lead up to the bowl game?
You're asking me if you want me to change my policy on first-year players talk.
With some of these guys before. You let us talk to Patman and those guys late in the season.
Well, I don't really have a problem with it. Gavin doesn't want to do it. So
I'm asking the wrong guy.
yeah, if you'll ask Gavin Lang, you know Gavin, if you ask him and he's okay with it, then we'll look it over. But the other day he didn't think it was a good idea because I brought it up to him, and he said I don't think it's a good idea. So
If you launch an investigation into Gavin Lane.
that's right.
Mike, is this a really hectic, time for Cowboy football with bowl preparations and recruiting and, I mean, it seems like you've got a lot of irons in the fire.
This is the busiest 3 weeks for us. Once we finish the season, everybody's out recruiting. We get X number of days. Because they put the bye week in for us, we lose 7 days of recruiting, which is I do not like, because those guys went and saw our players that we didn't get to see. So we go out as much as we can. We stay out to the last second. We come in, had a recruiting weekend, bowl practice. There's just a lot going on right now, and it's settled down a little bit because there's a dead period in recruiting. So it's calmed down a little bit, but it's just a very busy time of the year. But it's a good thing. I mean, I coached 11 years, my first 11 years in coaching college football, and I was bored in December because we weren't in a bowl game. So it's a good thing, but yes, it's extremely busy time of the year for us. For everybody involved, administration, they're trying to plan bowls, and the Mac Butlers of the world, and Gavin Langs, and all those. It's just a busy time.
It's a good year for you guys to be playing a bowl game in Texas rather than the Russell Athletic Bowl or something, considering what you're talking about.
Every year we want to be in the highest bowl we can. We want to be in the playoff, and if not, then you try to get to the BCS bowl, and then if not, we're very lucky in this league. We have terrific bowls, but if they stick you in a bowl in Texas, then we look at it as a bonus because of the number of players whose families can drive, and it's very well publicized and it's easy to market that we're there and a lot of people see us. But you know, the bowls that we have been fun and good for us, but the ones in Texas certainly help us in recruiting.
17 scheduled out, and obviously with the Big 12 title game, that's a week that's left. You just have one off week, and the way your Big 12 schedule, Bedlam moving up. I mean, I know you've got a lot going on, but have you given a look to that at all?
Well, we'll definitely have to become road warriors. I haven't looked, but how many teams in the Big 12 this year were in bowls? So we have 5, and then our 3 non-conference are all bowl teams, right? So we have 8 teams we play next year that'll be in bowls. We travel to South Alabama, to West Virginia, to Iowa State, to Pitt, all in 1 year. We're going to get a lot of Sky Miles.
Was there, despite the tough games that are out there, the fact that Bedlam moves up, I assume because the Big 12 sees you guys and OU as a possible Big 12 title game, was there any sort of validation in your mind that they put that earlier so you didn't have 2 weeks in a row of you guys?
You know, earlier I talked about Mark being a good guy. The first thing I thought of when I saw it was the day they put the game. I was a little surprised about that, but you know, either way, it doesn't matter. The conference is going to do what they do. They don't ask our input. If we give our input, they're not going to listen anyway. So we take the schedule and we roll with it. It is what it is, and we have a good returning team, and we'll have to be. I scanned it, and we'll have to be careful the way we practice with all the road games and so on and so forth. We'll have to be really smart in how we handle our players to try to keep their health and their strength and all that throughout the season. But we'll be fine.
The Big 12 wants to put you guys away from Oklahoma in the last game of the season so you don't rematch immediately. I mean, the question becomes, how can you plan for such a thing? How did they know Oklahoma won't be playing West Virginia in the Big 12 championship, and they play in the last week of the year? Well, or you guys play Kansas, you know what I mean? How can you plan for?
Well, you can't. That's why I thought you should have divisions. Then you play your interdivision early, and you play your opposite. That way you don't have that happen. So you can't do it. I'm going to guess they're just going on history.
Right.
But no, there's no way to do it.
Divisions, 10 teams, still play the same number of games.
Yeah, but you would play the teams in the opposite division early, and that way you would never have a crossover, within a month or whatever that would be. I don't know the math, but probably 4 or 5 weeks.
You might have to be in an opposite division from OU though, if that were the case.
Well, we would have been in an opposite division. Yeah.
You forgot to mention you get to go to South Alabama too next year. You wonder how in the world you ever found yourself.
Well, you'd have to talk to Dave Martin to me. Dave Martin scheduled that. I don't have anything to do with it. No, Gavin stays out of scheduling. He tries to stay on my good side. You guys know me. I want 3 home games. I want to be 3-0, easy as possible.
Mike, when all the
He's starting to cut me off because he doesn't want me to start talking about scheduling, or he doesn't want me to start talking about the conference. My friends, my good friends.
Were coming out.
I just sent him a Christmas card. Do what now?
When all the Baylor reports were coming out a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, it came to light that the extension from the summer hasn't been signed and finalized yet. Is that something you're planning to do after the bowl game, or?
Well, in order for that to happen, both parties have to come to an agreement, and that hadn't taken place. I mean, it's a pretty simple process.
Reason for not coming to an agreement?
Well, I don't think that's something that is worth commenting on, but there's no reason to hide it. I mean, I think it's pretty, there's not really any reason to talk about it. Hopefully that can happen though.
Mike, the way that Justice Hill's been able to run the ball this year, how much of that is a credit to Marcus Arroyo and what he's done in a short amount of time with that entire group?
He does a really nice job. I have to sit back and evaluate everything in our program. And when I look at a lot of what we've done, one area that's been positive is our ability to create some running lanes. And the second thing that we've done a good job of is keeping our backs fresh. And that's not always easy because you always want to put the best player in all the time because you think, I don't want to miss one play without him being in there. And then the longer you do it, you realize that you have to keep them fresh for the duration of the year. And he's done a terrific job of handling Carson. And then when we lost Carson, I was real nervous about 27 getting too many carries. And then balancing those guys and then letting Rennie get a little, Junior gets a little bit here and there. And that handling of that position has been very positive in my opinion.
Is that Arroyo on the sidelines dictating who's coming in and out? Is that him and Coach Yersich sort of?
It's him. Mike's got so many things going that he does not take that into account. He's got 1,000 things going. So Marcus and Casey Dunn, they handle their positions, and then McIndoe handles the Cowboy backs because the other guy's got so many things going on.
You talk about this being your busiest 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
How does that make Christmas? I mean, are you able to fully enjoy it? Does your mind wander at certain points?
I'm not great at Christmas shopping. I just have, it is what it is, but I love that time of the year. Now we shut it down here on the 20th. And so when we do, in the staff meeting, I make sure everybody has everything done for the bowl, knock it all out, and then everybody get out of here. And because the assistant coaches haven't been around their family for the most part since July. I'm here a few more days because there's days I'm not out as a head coach on the road recruiting, but for them, they're gone all the time. So I want them to get out of here and be with their families and so on and so forth. And that is the difficult part for us. It is for everybody, because you're busy all the time, trying to get your house ready, trying to get the tree ready, trying to get gifts, do all that. But to a certain extent, as you get old like me, you realize you might as well just sit back and chill out and enjoy it because otherwise you miss all the good times. Now, Robert Allen's wife makes toffee that's out of this world. And I'm not just saying that because I like Robert, but she makes a toffee and they bring in, and people in the office not only steal it from each other, they fight for it. And so that makes it fun for us also. Danielle took mine yesterday from my desk, and she doesn't know that I know that she took it. But I saw it. So anyway, all right. Anything? One more question, Hoover, just because I like you.
Have you had a chance to think about what your legacy is going to be here long term? And where I'm going with this is no.
No, I'm for you. I'm listening.
Okay, where I'm
you know
going
me,
with
I
this
could
is,
care less. I really could care less about that.
Well, you were a great player here. You've been the most successful head coach.
Mm-hmm.
But when things come up like the Baylor thing,
you're in the Christmas spirit. Now you are in the Christmas spirit because you are usually not like this.
When things come up like Baylor and this contract
Mhm.
that you haven't signed and the comment you just made about we haven't come to an agreement yet.
Mhm.
Does that complicate what your legacy ultimately will be?
Oh, I would hope not. And again, just because we haven't come to an agreement is not a negative. That's just a business part of what we do. And I love being at Oklahoma State. This is who I am. This is what I believe in. This is always where I want to be. But there is a small side to what I do that's business. And I would think at some point we would be able to come to what I would call a fair and reasonable agreement. And I would look forward to doing that. I wish that those conversations didn't have to take place, but unfortunately they do. That's just the way the world works.
Why do you think the Baylor thing happened then?
What do you mean?
When you were talking to Baylor, or they were talking to you, or if you love being here so much? And
Well, I didn't. There was a lot more to that than really what actually happened. And again, what I try to do is never talk about any of that, just because I don't think it's fair to any of the parties involved. And that's the tough part of the world we live in. I joked about sports radio and social media and all that, but there's so much out there, and 95% of it's not true.
but you could do a lot to put.
Yeah, but then I'm out there I become President Trump, and everybody's mad because he's on Twitter all the time. I mean, right? The mainstream media is furious because he puts things out on Twitter instead of going through them, and that's really what it happens. Is now I become a person that every time something happens, I put something out on Twitter, and that's not really what I want to do, and I don't think that's what's best for our athletic department or our football. And so I just really have to sit and watch it all, but what you're getting at, there's some truth to, and what somebody else said, or Robert talked about with Mac with the Rams, is that the most important thing, believe it or not, you guys are important, but the most important thing is the team. And I've always told them if there's any truth to anything that would ever happen, they would be the first to know. And that's the way I've always kept it with those guys from a long time ago. And so they kind of laugh, and they've been that way. But to answer your question, I got to run, is that I don't pay much attention to those things, because the most important thing to me is I watched, like last night. Y'all seen that movie McFarlane? Yeah. Have you watched it? You need to watch that. It's awesome. Have y'all seen McFarlane with Kevin Costner? Oh, it's a great movie, right? Well, I was watching that movie last night, and in the end, when you watch a movie like that, and I know this is an extreme because we're a Power 5 school, there's millions and millions of dollars involved, and they're just at a place where a high school but what that coach did is he changed the lives of those kids. He changed generations of families who didn't have an opportunity, and he gave them something and got them a reason to get in college. And then from that point on, their lives changed. In the end, that's really what we do. Now, if we don't win enough games, they fire us and hire somebody else. I know all that. I get it. But when you do it as long as I do, we get as much satisfaction from that as anything. And that's the legacy that I prefer more than anything else. So, all right. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.